I would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Okay, so I'm excited. We are now in the third volume of what I call the DePALMA files. So, of course, that means I've got my good friend Brett of Dissect That Film back on the show to talk about two more DePALMA films in this series. And this week, we're going SLEAZE. We're doing a double feature of DePALMA's sleaziest movies, which I think work perfectly together. But before we get into that, let's bring our friend back onto the show. Brett, how you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you again for having me on to talk about more DePALMA and, to get a little dirty,
Get a little dirty, you know what? I might have to put this episode a week earlier than planned because you got all your Christmas shit in the background. Or you could be like that guy that just keeps all of his Christmas stuff up until February.
Yeah. That's what we'll tell everybody. It's okay.
That's what we'll tell everybody. He just is taking a long time bringing it down. So how are you enjoying this journey, man? So far, we have done Carrie and the Fury as a double feature. That was our first one. Then we did Obsession and Blowout, which, Blowout, we both agreed is like one of our favorite DePalma movies, if not favorite DePalma movie. And this week we're going SLEAZE. We are doing Body Double and Dressed to Kill. So that's 6 DePalma films together. How you feeling?
Ooh, it's like a roller coaster. Like, we started off with a movie that I had seen a lot with Carrie, and then discovering the Fury for the first time. Like, it was a movie I had heard of before, and getting to experience it for the first time with you was really fun. And then it was like, then we started going down because it was like Obsession, and then Blowout kind of brought us back up. It was like
Right.
that twist. And now this is the fun. This is where I'm gonna spoil it. This is the most fun I've had watching DePalma movies, was watching these two, especially one of them. But I'll wait until we get to that movie.
I think it's the most fun he had making movies, right? Like, he literally puts all of his favorite things in these two films. I'm going to start with boobs. He puts boobs in these movies.
Oh, yes.
Sex and sleaze, Hollywood intrigue, and DePalma loves Hitchcock. And these might be his two most Hitchcockian homages, but with like that trashy, sleazy mentality that he is unapologetic about. And that's why I kind of love these.
Yeah, this, I went into Dressed to Kill literally going, oh, pause, no children around, right? I was not expecting the beginning of that movie.
I don't think anyone was. I literally think that, with Dressed to Kill, he's like, okay, so I love Psycho, but Psycho didn't have enough sex and it didn't have enough milfy breasts in the first 30 seconds of the movie. And that's one of the things, and we talked about this with the last two, is what De Palma is going to give you in the film within like the first 5 minutes. Like, he's going to say, this is what you're in for, and it's your chance to leave the theater or turn off the VCR in the first 5 minutes, because this is what I'm giving you. Are you in or are you out? And I feel like the first, maybe 6 or 7 movies in his catalog are perfect at that. He really lets you know what you're in for. Later on, as he gets more into like the Hollywood years, where he's now like an A-list director and less of an auteur, there's less of that kind of teasing of the audience. Like, I'm going to poke you with my De Palma stick and see if you're game.
Yeah. It's like, you remember I'm still here, and I can, and I'm not going to back down. I'm going to do some crazy shit.
What I love about Dressed to Kill too, because we're going to start with that one, we're going to go chronologically, is I love that both of Body Double and Blowout essentially start with a movie in a movie, right? When you said you first saw Blowout, you're like, wait, I don't remember Blowout being like a slasher film, and that's how it starts out because they're making a slasher film. Body Double does kind of the same thing, But then when you're watching Dress to Kill and you're watching the beginning of Blowout, you also realize that he has just this obsession with voyeurism. All of his films have something to do with voyeurism, if not in the movie, with him as the ultimate voyeur. And so we talked about it in Carrie, the shower scene at the beginning. We talked about it in Blowout, where we're like going from room to room in that sorority house. And like there's a girl masturbating, and then there's like a couple making out, and then there's a girl in the shower. And he takes pretty much all of that and puts it right into the beginning of Dress to Kill.
Yeah, it's not even subtle. It's just
It's not
straight in. You're sitting there, and as someone who has only kind of seen this movie from clips here and there,
right.
I just went into this first scene going, oh, this feels so DePALMA. Like it is like it. He just had a DePALMA stamp and he just slapped it on the screen, and it just. The thing about DePALMA is nothing is fast, nothing is quick. It is we're going to sit on Angie Dickinson in the shower forever. It is going to feel like an eternity. And the crazy thing is, it wasn't even her, like
right,
which is hilarious to read about after the fact. But it just goes on forever of her just staring at her husband or boyfriend or whoever this was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And just moaning and rubbing herself. And I'm just like, wow. If it was any other director, I probably would have been like, okay, I get it. But it's like, it's DePALMA. So you're just expecting this. So you're like, all right, I guess I'm strapping in. My wife walks out. She's like, okay, walks away. Like, it's just, you're expecting it.
You know what? And we've talked about it in his other films. Like, he loves bookends, right? Especially in the earlier movies. And both of these movies have very precise and intentional bookends. And since we're talking about this one, this bookend, it starts off with essentially a dream sequence. By the way, spoiler alert, I normally give spoiler alerts early on, but this one is like major spoilers. But as we're going to get further into Dress to Kill, I don't even think the spoilers matter, because if you can't figure out halfway through who the killer is, then there's something wrong with you. But yeah, the idea that this movie starts off with this dream sequence of her pleasuring herself in the shower and watching her husband or boyfriend, and then it turns into something kind of violent and like wakes her up out of it. And that's the thing I like, the juxtaposition of what starts off as a fantasy and then becomes something a little bit more violent and threatening. And then it cuts to her just being so unpleasured by her husband in bed in real life. It's funny that he is really trying to tell us that he has the inner knowledge and workings of a middle-aged white suburban housewife, right? He does have a lot of these things in his earlier films where he's really writing, I'm not going to say in a feminine sense, but he's writing as if he is a woman. He is a teenage girl. He is Carrie, because he wrote all these movies. And I think it's interesting because, yes, it feels exploitive, but it also at the same time, it feels like he does have an empathy and understanding for how women are misunderstood, misinterpreted, and unsatisfied with their lovers and their lives. It's a really interesting thing that he does in those early movies.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just sleaze to be sleaze. I feel like there's always some sort of message behind it. There's always some sort of dialogue that you get throughout the movie that kind of explains why certain things are going on, or why did we get that erotic scene that goes on for way too long in the beginning of the movie. Like, she spills the beans. She tells Michael Caine's character like everything pretty much, and what her dissatisfaction with her husband and everything. So it's like, it's not just boobs, naked, just sex to have sex. There's always a purpose behind why we're seeing it.
The influential nature of especially Dress to Kill, and even with Body Double, I'd say Dress to Kill even more. It is the proto version of the erotic 90s thrillers that we would see later on, like things like Joe Esterhaas would write, like Basic Instinct and Sliver and Showgirls. If it wasn't for De Palma at least whetting the beak of the appetite of the cinema goers of the early 80s with like the sleaze stuff, because you and I, we watched all these cult movies as well. I'm a huge fan of the LA sleaze movies like Angel and Vice Squad. Like, I love that stuff. But that had a very particular audience. At this point, De Palma had enough clout in the industry and enough of the studio's attention that he could make what would normally be like a grindhouse B erotic picture, but have major stars in it, like Michael Caine and Angie Dickinson. I'm not going to say Nancy Allen because she was his girlfriend and he was putting her in everything back then, but there was prestige to this movie. And I think that is what got people kind of hating it a little bit, because how could Michael Caine demean himself being in such a sleazy, erotic thriller? Angie Dickinson, she already kind of dabbled in these waters. She was in a lot of the Corman movies, like Big Bad Mama and stuff like that. But the fact that he was using this clout to make an Alfred Hitchcock homage, and this is my opinion, we talked about this before, I think Hitchcock would have loved to make a movie like this. He would have loved to have had boobs in his movie.
Oh, absolutely.
He would have loved to have maybe unsimulated sex in some of his movies. He just couldn't do it back then, and I feel that's why DePalma picked up that.
He tried.
Lead.
He tried so many times, but it was just the wrong time.
And Angie Dickinson may as well be one of his blonde bombshells from the 60s and 70s. She may as well have been a Tippi Hedren or a Kim Novak. But instead, the idea that this is like a middle-aged, unsatisfied housewife is also intriguing to me too, because it is a great red herring, because as we get into this conversation, it is a red herring for what the movie really is about, just like Psycho was, but there's more empathy for this one, because this isn't a woman who's trying to steal money so she can be with her sexy boyfriend like in Psycho. This is a woman who's just looking for any kind of reason to keep on living because she's so unsatisfied with her life. And that empathy is even more intriguing to me.
Yeah. She's somebody who is dissatisfied with her marriage, with her sex life, but she's also, a loving mother to a teenage son who is, doing his own thing. And, she doesn't seem like she has the connection she once did with him. So she feels alone. And so when she goes off and goes to that museum and you get that really long, 9-minute dialogueless scene that just goes on, because she's just looking for anything. She's just anything that will pique her interest or just satisfy her enough to make it to tomorrow.
This is where my co-host of Back to the Balcony, Justin, and I disagree on certain things, because I really don't know what his take on this movie is, but masturbatory tracking shots and long form sequences like DePalma does usually break the bank with him. He doesn't have the patience for it. Me, I could handle 5 more minutes of it. I am so intrigued by filmmakers' choices, and that's why I love Bonfire of the Vanities as well, is you're going to make this choice to have a 9-minute tracking shot through a museum with no dialogue, where it's almost like who's the hunter and who's the hunted, right? Because you've got the MILF hunter dude in the museum who's got the long game, which I love that he's playing the long game, and that kind of comes into play later. And she thinks that she is pursuing him, when really he's been pursuing her and has it all lined up. The emotions on her face, the Pino Donaggio music in the background, and these sweeping tracking shots, that is where you are immersed into a De Palma film, where at first you're like, what am I watching? Why is the filmmaker doing this? But then once it comes to its fruition, you're like, wow, I've never seen anyone do that. And I kind of love the fact that it is a huge segment of this movie. I bet studio heads were losing their shit. I bet the studio suits were in that screening room going what are we doing? No one's spoken in 9 minutes and he's just going around the museum. What the fuck?
She's just smiling at people when she hears far off conversations and what is going on?
That's where the Psycho comparisons come into play, because here we have spent all this time with this character and we've really grown this empathy and sympathy for her plight. We've listened to all of her psychiatric, ramblings to Michael Caine, who's her doctor, about how unsatisfied she is. And then we find out that, oh my God, the guy that she's gone with, her one dive into a cheating lifestyle, right? Her one dive into infidelity turns out to be the wrong decision. The guy apparently is a serial philanderer and has a venereal disease. And this is where I think some of that moral compensation of like the early 40s and 50s in movies kind of comes into play, because now that she's made that choice and made that mistake, it's her turn to be punished in a sense. And she is punished by Bobby, our slasher of the movie, which is a tall blonde woman with a very manly physique who traps her in the elevator and kills her with a straight razor. You can tell that he wanted to go for the shower scene vibe from Psycho, but maybe wanted to amplify it, which he did. But at the same time, it's something that's very dated. I'm sure it played a lot better in the early 80s before we've gotten a little bit more jaded on what we think a slasher should look like, or the suspense or the buildup. And that's where this movie does lose a lot of people, is that scene, because it's either a bad rip-off of Hitchcock, or it's an homage that takes it up to the next level that Hitchcock couldn't go.
Yeah, and I think the way that he shoots this scene is masterful, because it's not just straight on, Angie Dickinson on the killer. You get the straight razor, and then when you're seeing her die, it's like reflections of the wall of the elevator, right. Or it's coming from then Nancy Allen's point of view once she discovers what's going on, and you get that shot of the killer like tucked in, but you're just seeing the reflection, and it's not just your typical slasher kill. It's very methodical, and I just love the reflective shots instead of it just being like, all right, here's your killer. It's like, no, you're only seeing them the way, like if you were Nancy Allen herself, like if you were in her shoes, that's what she's seeing.
Right. And his artistic license, which he's used in every film so far that we've talked about, using like the split diopter shot, yes, and also just split screens to be able to see different points of view. And that comes into play because it's not just a technical thing that he does in his movies. His split diopter shots and his split screen shots, to me, are very intentional in the sense of like, we are trying to understand two different people's point of view without having to cut back and forth. You're able to watch everyone's point of view and everyone's view on the situation in one sitting. Brilliant. And I don't care that he overdoes it his entire career. It's his, in my opinion, right?
They look good.
I've seen
if
it
they
in
look
other
good,
movies,
keep
but
doing
it
it.
looks great. Right.
If it works,
it works.
Yeah.
If it's your style, it's your style. I got to talk about the characters for a second, because we've talked about this in the previous episodes. It's becoming a running thing. The fact that DePalma loves flawed characters, you could call them heroes, but in a sense, they're kind of anti-heroes. He loves the fact that he can put a prostitute as a main character, and you're going to have empathy for a prostitute. You're going to have empathy for a middle-aged wife who's got infidelity on the brain. You can have empathy for homeless people, for thieves and murderers and thugs. I love that about him because it's so anti-Hollywood. It's so anti-good guys wear white and bad guys wear black. He likes to play in the gray. And this movie's all about the gray. No one's really a true good person in this movie with the exception of maybe Peter the son. And even then, he's kind of got his own thing going on. But to be able to put a whole film with gray characters in it, it's just something he was so good at.
Yeah, and the fact that we follow Angie Dickinson's character for such a long time, for then her to just get knocked off, and you're just going, okay, like where are we going to go now? Like the fact is, like, no, she's always going to be there. Like it's always going to be in the background of that character, but now it's going to feed into Nancy Allen's character. Oh God, I can't remember his name. The son, Peter, and like their adventure. So it like kind of turns into a completely different movie. Other than Bobby is just around, like but you kind of feel like a different a different tone after Angie Dickinson dies.
I mean, if you've listened to my show, if people who listen to my show know that my number one reason for liking a film or for having it on my shelf is the rewatchability factor. The fact that you could watch this movie in the theater for the first time and not notice that Bobby is all over the fucking place in this movie. Like he slips in shots like Tyler Durden in Fight Club. He like puts little flashes of Bobby all over the place. but you don't know who Bobby is on the first watch. And the second, third time you watch these movies, you're like, oh my God, Bobby's at the museum. Bobby's at the train station. But like there's red herrings of her, but she's everywhere. And that just kind of adds to the rewatchability factor. This was made like just barely before home video. So it's like De Palma almost knew that this film was going to grow in appreciation later because people are going to keep finding all these little things that he put in it that was going to either take you to the right direction of who the killer was or just confuse the fuck out of you. It's like a brilliant way. It's like a choose your own adventure novel in a sense.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is 1980. This is the same year The Shining came out, and The Shining to me is very similar to this in the way that you can watch this so many times and pick up something new every time.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen The Shining, it feels like 1,000 times, and I still watch it going, oh yeah, I've never noticed that before. And it's not from like watching documentaries or anything. It's just the littlest things that I was like, if I'm just casually watching it, you're not going to pick it up. And I think this is that type of movie where if I go back and rewatch this, even tonight, I just watched it. Like, I feel like I'm going to pick up, even if it's something you didn't even mention, I'm going to pick up something new about it. And I think that's what makes, and I agree with you, that's what makes a movie rewatchable, is the fact that I can constantly figure something out or just learn something new. And I think that's what De Palma does so well with a lot of his films.
It's not just throwing darts at a dartboard. He, I think, intentionally knows how to create a very intricate story and an intricate picture that's just beyond typical filmmaking. He is playing with multiple levels of, I'm going to say, attention and experience of how you can get more into a film by getting people maybe misinterpret it the first couple times, and then you understand what it's really about or what it's not about. It's a great thing. Now, Michael Caine's character, that is a very, I'm going to say, problematic character today, in today's parlance, especially when you talk about things like transgenderism. They use the word transsexual in this one, but also the fact that we're dealing with more than this, just that. We are dealing with schizophrenia, split personalities, identity disorder, and that is kind of like a very cliche thing to do these days. But for some reason in this one, the sleaze and the, I'm going to say, over-exaggerated nature of it makes it almost forgivable. Like, it is a cliche, and you kind of know exactly what's going on. And even if you've seen the movie before, you anticipate it. But the performance is so good, and the sleight of hand of how to make you think that it couldn't be him. The voice messages from the Bobby character that Michael Caine is listening to. Well, it can't be him, but it looks like him in the mirror. Like, if you took the style and the skill out of the film, it's very transparent. It's very cliche. Yet somehow they make it work.
He deals with schizophrenia, and that's, it's Bobby and Dr. Elliot kind of, when something, arousing happens, that's what activates Bobby. And
right.
She goes on, her killing spree, or just goes off and kills somebody. And it's just interesting to see, to question, and I was questioning it myself. Like, would this, like, if you were to show this movie to today's generation, they had never seen it before. Would this movie be considered? Would it be a bad movie? Would it be offensive? That's what I'm trying to think. I don't know why offensive was such a hard word to think of. Would this be offensive to today's generation, especially if they had not seen the movie before?
I mean, I've recommended this to lots of people a lot younger than me. I watched it with my partner last year. She'd never seen it before, and she's really good at picking things up in movies, but she did not catch that Bobby and Dr. Elliot were the same person until maybe right before the big reveal, where she's like, wait a second. Because that first thing she said when Bobby shows up in the elevator, she's like, that looks like a man. But she didn't put two and two together until just before the big reveal when the lady cop shows up. So she was fine with that. But then when I asked her, like, so how did you feel about the representation? Because it's a very different climate today than it was back then, where you could use transsexual and transgenderism as a negative, and people in society seem to be fine with it because we weren't as accepting back then. the hot take on my end is I think that De Palma is very I'm going to say empathetic and sympathetic to that variety, because he throws that Margulis character in, who is the doctor for Dr. Elliot, and it kind of explains what Bobby's personality is, and then you find that reveal out later. But they almost try to break it down like, yes, it is a negative in society at the moment, but you just have to do better to understand what these people really are like and what they're going through. And sometimes they're violent and negative because of how society treats them. So I think there is a baseline of empathy towards why that character is written that way, but it is very easily, I'm not going to say excusable, but it's very easily utilized as a negative to kind of move the plot forward. And so I think just based on how you view the movie, if you're going to view it with a modern day sensibility, it might come off really offensive.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely was something that like sat in the back of my mind and I didn't watch it going, wow, this wouldn't, bode well in today's, world. But I think the way that De Palma directs it and really puts like, I think, positive messaging, even though our main killer is transgender or is going through the transition or whatever it is, but it's also mixed with the schizophrenia. There's just a lot of other factors where I don't think it's just dumping being transgender is bad, where there's other messaging in there where it's just like, no, this just dealing with mental health and just dealing with a lot of other issues. I think that's what De Palma is trying to portray on screen. And there's just a lot of other messaging from other characters that are kind of putting, that part of society in a brighter note. Like when Nancy Allen talks about transgender and going into like transitioning and how it works, it's like, it's not just a bunch of BS. Like she's actually giving Peter the somewhat right information about everything, and she's not saying it in a negative tone. It seems to be accepting, even though she's not fully saying it. If you know what I mean?
Well, I also think that inclusion of that Phil Donahue interview with like that real person,
right?
I think that is a perfect way to kind of show that there is a compassion for that, because that is not a negative interview. It really is to kind of get the audience to understand that this is a lifestyle that someone could easily exploit for bad. And that's kind of what happens. But don't think that they are all that way. Like, don't fall for that typical cliche or that stereotype that's the thing you have to be afraid of. I think they do a very good job at that too when she's being stalked through the train station, where she's escaping from what she thinks is Bobby the slasher, which he really is. But the real danger are the street gangs or the cops that don't think that there's anything going on and ignore her plights and ignore her pleas. That's very good screenwriting, because it is creating a fear and suspense and misdirecting us from what like the real fear and suspense should be. He's so good at that, and I think that too many people give him a bad rap for being exploitive. I think it's artistically done.
Yeah, that whole subway scene is just tense because she is literally just completely cornered on this train between the street gang and Bobby, and then you said the cop that literally is just doesn't think anything's going on, and you get that long like minute and a half just shot of them both looking at each other constantly, where it's like he's not going to do anything. He's this entire time he is suspicious of her for some reason, and then it kind of shows her distrust of just everybody. The only person she can really trust is Peter, because he's just a kid.
What a great pairing. Like, that is the kind of stuff I'm talking about, where you're putting like a high school nerd together with a prostitute. Now, these two are like your Holmes and Watson of the movie, figuring the case out. A teenage boy and a prostitute. And what's cool about her is like she's all business, right? Like she's a high-end call girl, essentially, a high-end escort. So there aren't drugs involved. There aren't any pimps involved. she has like an agency that she gets her work through, and she's also trading on the side. She's like a day trader as well. Like there's so many layers to her character. So it pisses me off because she gets a lot of bad press for this movie for her performance. She got the Golden Raspberry Award for Worst Actress on its first year out. I'm like, I think she's great in this. If anything, I like her performance better in this than in Blowout, and Blowout's like one of my favorite movies.
I agree. The crazy thing is, the Golden Raspberries of 1980, they also nominated Shelley Duvall for The Shining, and that's a bunch of crap. So
right.
But yeah, I thought her performance was actually really, really well done, especially compared to Blowout. Blowout, I had my complaints about her in Blowout. I thought she just went a little too far.
Yeah, it's very performative.
Yes, where this seems more believable. Like the way she interacts with everybody here. There are some moments where I think other characters interact with her kind of unrealistically. Like,
yeah, Dennis Franz.
Oh my! What can you say about Dennis Franz? That man is he's one of those performers who is just like, you put him in a cop role and he is going to nail it every time. That just sleazy New Yorker cop, and that's why I think he got the job on NYPD Blue, because he's just so
100%.
damn good at it. But boy, there is moments in this movie I'm like, what? Are we in a different movie? Like when she is talking to him, you don't feel like you're in the same movie sometimes. He is just going so far. Like, do you even get out of your office? Like you're just constantly
his cop character is the same as like his pimp character, which is the same as his like dirty PI character. But that's the thing, is like it just works. If Dennis Franz showed up in a movie with a cup of tea and a British accent, I'd be like, what the fuck? Like, I don't want that. I want the guy who yells and calls her a whore.
Many times.
Okay, so like at the end of the day, we talked about the bookends. The bookend of this one, I mean, it's cliche. He already did it in Carrie, the dream, the jump scare, the fear that everything's going to be okay in the music. But we already said, if it's not broken, don't fix it. I'm fine with it because it just builds more into the De Palma legacy, where this is a very sleazy movie, but it's very artistic. And that's the thing, is like, I feel if De Palma was going to direct a porno movie with full-on unsimulated sex and penetration, he'd probably have like a 9-minute tracking shot that doesn't cut around it. Like, he wants to be artistic in everything that he does, and I just appreciate the hell out of it.
He's going to make the most artistic and cinematic porn you will ever see in your life.
I kind of wish he did. I wish he would have made one. Just one.
I would have watched.
He dabbled so close. I mean, because if we jump into the next movie, man, you can tell that he kind of wanted to do that.
Yep.
Body Double. So if Dressed to Kill is his Psycho, Body Double is his Rear Window. But it's not just a window. It's a 360-degree window that looks over all of Hollywood with a beautiful telescope right into the window of a very sexy, exotic dancing woman. That's the plot.
I'm gonna come out and say it. This movie made me laugh more than some comedies have. This movie was hilarious.
It's
from beginning to end. Me and my wife did some MST3K with this movie, watching this. It was just so fun. We had so many times just looking at each other, just going, is this happening right now? Like, the decisions that are made by Craig Wasson throughout the entire movie are just like, you are in the wrong movie, bro. Where are you? Like, where? Like, it's just so out there. Sometimes you don't feel like you're watching a De Palma movie.
Well, that's the thing I love about this movie, because if you watch it and take it seriously, you are going to be very disappointed. If you watch it the way you watched it and the way I watch it, where it's like, we are watching a film about the dumbest man in Hollywood. He's the dumbest man in Hollywood. He's the most insecure, pussified man in Hollywood. And we are supposed to think that he's our hero, that we need to follow him through what is actually a very toxic stalking relationship that he has with an obsession with a woman. Like, he is a bad guy. And what makes him feel like he's justified in being a bad guy is he thinks that he's helping, but he's not. He's perving. De Palma knows this.
It goes so far. It's just, it gets to the point where you're just like, is it ever going to end? This man has been following this woman for 15 minutes of screen time, and you're just supposed to go, okay, the only reason that he is the way he is because he walked in on his girlfriend cheating on him. Right. And it's put him down this spiral, which, shout out to Barbara Crampton. I love Barbara Crampton. She gets her little cameo in this. She's great. But Craig Wasson, for one, I was watching this movie and I went, where do I know him from? Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3. And just as everything is happening, I'm just like, what are you, like, it's just so much of, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And the whole stalking sequence is just mind-boggling to watch. Just the way everything is shot, and the fact that you're just yelling at the screen like you're not even hiding.
Right.
Like, this man is just out in the open, just staring inside of a store, and like the way that things are crafted, where she's trying on the underwear. For one, no, you're not supposed to do that. Two, close the curtain. What is happening in this movie? And it's so on purpose, of course, because it's De Palma. He wants it to be this sleazy, journey with this guy, with a guy you really don't want to follow during a sleazy journey that he's on. Like, you're just like, who is this guy?
That's why I love this movie, man, because this movie is so intentionally dislikable. It's almost like he's daring you to turn it off. He's daring you to stop watching it, but you can't, because you want to see what else this dumb fuck is going to do.
It's so entertaining. That's why. It's just, I'm having too much fun watching this guy make the dumbest decisions of anyone I've seen on screen in a long time.
It's like Sandler in Uncut Gems. Like, that, it was not entertaining for me. That was literally like stress inducing. I'm going to have a heart attack watching this movie. If I'm going to watch someone ruin his life, I want to watch it like this, where he just keeps making these bad decisions that are going to lead us to something entertaining. I also think that it's a metaphor for how empty and void and whorish Hollywood is, right?
Right.
Because he's an actor and he's got claustrophobia, and he's in this vampire coffin at the beginning where he freezes because he's claustrophobic. Well, first of all, I think that he would probably not even get in that coffin to begin with, but that's not fun. We have to show the meltdown and the breakdown, and we have Dennis Franz as the director again, so it's a Dennis Franz double feature.
Yep.
So that's where, like, De Palma is brilliant, because he creates this false sense of empathy that at least gets you hooked into what this character's history and motives are. But that's the thing, is like 30 minutes in this movie, you can totally see why his girlfriend's banging someone else. This dude sucks.
You feel bad for him for about 10 seconds, and then you see him make one bad decision. You went, I get it. Barbara Crampton was too good for you.
Right. This is where I think we really get into what the meat of this movie is, because Craig Wasson is not the lead character, in my opinion. He's just the vessel. I think the lead character is the industry. The lead character is Hollywood. And it's just this 80s kind of excess and sleazy vibe that De Palma wants to show us, where there's not a lot of difference between the film industry, the B-movie horror industry, and the porn industry. At the end of the day, everyone's a prostitute in this industry. And I think that's what he's showing us. And how easily manipulated insecure people like actors actually are. They can be manipulated and talked into anything. Not only can they be manipulated and talked into, taking their clothes off, doing some, sex scenes, just kind of washing all their morals away just for fame. Someone figured out that you can actually get them to be a part of your murder plot. And it's going to be so easy because they're so stupid. They're going to literally hand the case to the policeman. I loved that part about this.
The beauty of this movie is that it does not hide. at least to me, as somebody who had seen this movie this is the very first time I'd ever seen this movie.
Nice.
I knew who the killer was as soon as I saw the killer.
Right.
Like, for the first time. And I think that was I don't think De Palma was trying to hide it. He purposely, I think, made that character to be like, yeah, it's him. It's that guy. But it's the journey that Craig Wasson is going on. But you're sitting there going, it's him. It's your friend. Like, what are you doing? Like, you should know this, but like, you're not him. But you're just seeing all the bad decisions he's making. Clearly, he's not smart enough to figure this out. He's just going to continue to make the boneheaded decisions and ultimately assist, even without his knowledge, in the murder of the woman.
Greg Henry is so good in this movie, and you're 100% right about knowing who the killer is, because De Palma does the perfect kind of push-in tracking shot on him as he's watching Craig Wasson tell a story about being the sardine in the can and why he's claustrophobic. You see the wheels turning and the calculations. Now, you caught it first off. I didn't, but then again, I saw this movie when I was like 14 or something.
Yeah, I mean, you watched it on a VHS, where you're not watching it in HD, where it's like, oh, clearly that's who that is.
Clearly that's it. Right, 100%. And then, like, also in the early days too, you couldn't tell that like the Indian character was just a really bad latex mask. It just looked like an ugly dude. We didn't really kind of mention that both of these movies have a lot of, I think, they owe a lot to the Italian crime and giallo films, because there is like that kind of not only sleaze and eroticism and violence that those 70s movies had, but also that suspension of disbelief, right? I think that's the difference between a De Palma thriller and things that Joe Esterhaas or other writers would do in the 90s, where they tried to make it plausible. Like, oh yes, this woman's a psycho, but it could happen. This just totally puts suspension of disbelief in the toilet and is like, no, I'm going to not only have this guy dress as a Native American, but he is going to kill his wife with a big fucking drill.
It's just like, so over the top, because it's like, when you first see that character, he's not subtle at all about anything, about his stalking. Like, he's literally just running through places. Like, he's not hiding from, he knows that Jake is following this woman. He's also following the woman. I don't know if I knew just yet who it was. So I'm like, yeah, I was like, this is just a very ugly dude.
Right.
But there's no subtlety for either character. There's no like, okay, we have to be like, I'm gonna hide behind here. I'm gonna do this. No, they're just terrible, and they're just running around aimlessly. And this woman is the one who is totally oblivious. She is the one who has zero awareness of anything that's going on around her, until she tells him that she knew he was following her, which was the moment. Like, did you though? Did you really?
Right. Which brings us to Melanie Griffith's character. Because Holly Body, let's say for all intents and purposes, the dumb blonde, is the one that has the least amount of indiscretions. Like, she is exactly who she says she is. Yes, she's a pornographer. She's a porn star. But she has things of what she will do for how much and things that she won't do. And it's all business for her. She has no intention for anything. She is just for hers and her own. That makes the porn star the most likable, relatable, and admirable character of the movie. Again, that is De Palma working on a whole different level than a normal screenwriter would. That's chess, not checkers, in my opinion.
Yeah. When Melanie Griffith, when she like is calling Craig Wasson names, like she is telling him, you're a creep, like you're weird, like get away from me. I'm like, yes. This is exactly the reaction you should have towards this man, because he is everything you're saying he is. This is not a main character like, oh man, that sucks. Like, he's just trying to help you. No, he is a creep, but he just can't compute how much of a creep he's actually being. He thinks he's being helpful, and it's just coming off just the complete opposite. And there is nothing that is going to convince him that he's not being helpful. Like, he is that dense.
He's that dense. Also, the fact that like I always get a kick out of the fact that like this guy's a struggling actor. He can't make it in movies. He might not be able to keep his role as the vampire in this B movie horror flick because of his claustrophobia. But the dude can be a porn star in like 5 minutes. Like his whole plan of infiltrating and getting in touch with Holly Body is to become a porn star and get right into a movie like that. He could have been doing this for like 10 years. He could have been in this industry and making money.
And he goes on to like the highest production porn film you'll ever see. Like they have a musical number and
they've got Frankie Goes to Hollywood in their porn movie.
Like what? Okay.
Oh, again, this is like, I know you're still discovering De Palma films, but I'm going to go out and say that this is his most bombastic one, and that's why it's just so much damn fun. And when people get on board, because like you get on Letterboxd and you read the reviews like, oh, I figured it out right away, or it's just such a stupid movie. It's like, no, it is operating at a whole different level. This is just supposed to be total sleazy, bombastic fun. Don't take any of this seriously. Don't take the whole third act and climax seriously because it's nonsense, but it's fun as hell. Essentially, it's a Disney ending. Like it's Gaston falling off the castle, right? We've got his dog that pushes him off of the embankment into the river. Like this is fucking fantasy.
It's absolutely outrageous, and this was a movie I laughed so hard at. And I, it's one of those things like, did De Palma make it that way? Did he want people to laugh at this movie? Because to be honest, I'm kind of split. I'm like, a little bit of me is like, I feel like he did. I feel like he's that type of guy who's like, I want people to find this funny. But also there's another side of me that's like, it's De Palma, and you look at his work beforehand and they didn't have this type of tone.
Right.
So it's more of like, well, maybe one day if I ever meet him, I'll have to ask him.
Well, I mean, there's definitely a cheekiness about him because we talked about it in the other movies. Let's talk about, in Obsession, a very serious tone to that movie. Mm-hmm. Yet John Lithgow's character is Foghorn Leghorn. Like he's a cartoon, right? Like there's a cheekiness about how De Palma puts things in movies. Nancy Allen is a cartoon character in Blowout. In Carrie, John Travolta is just a fucking clown. Like there is a cheekiness to De Palma, and I feel like this was a film where he's going to just do that all the way throughout the movie. Not just have one character be that way, the whole movie is going to be that way. And again, this is one of those movies that people are either really hot or really cold on, and I just think it's just fun as hell.
Because I mean, Body Double does something that it was like, it starts off where you feel like you're in a typical De Palma film. You're going in, you meet your main character. He goes through a tough time. He befriends, Sam, and then, you get the whole peeping Tom thing, which is like, it's the 80s. Like this was something many, many people did. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not right, but people did it. But then you get that whole just extra long stalking scene of him being helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And then he runs into her and then he goes to get her stuff. It goes through that claustrophobic moment, and then he comes out, and then they just start making out and like rubbing all over each other. And that's when the movie just became a comedy. As soon as that scene hit, that it was a comedy from then on forward. It just kept on making me laugh because it's just like, what? It's one of those things where it's like, is this in his head? Is this actually happening?
I'm glad you said that, because there is two interpretations of this movie. And the one is that it's just ridiculous all the way throughout. Or is this what is going on in his head during his claustrophobic meltdown in that opening scene? Because after the whole movie plays, it cuts from him being in that grave to him being back in the coffin as the vampire and finishing the scene. So there are interpretations of, is this all in his head, and was this essentially him becoming a method actor and going through this whole journey of emotions just to break out of his claustrophobia and finish the scene? It's a little loose because you don't really know if he got hired back, because he was supposed to get fired, right? Or was that all in his head? And is he just in the coffin and finishing the scene? Then it cuts to the shower scene and Melanie Griffith's there watching. So who knows if maybe something else happened later on that we didn't see. But I think that there is a nice, loose enough ending to this. And De Palma's known for his bookends. So it could be up to the viewer's interpretation, just like I think many films that have copied it in the past have, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's the beauty of De Palma, as he will do these type of things. He'll do these type of things, and he just is like, you figure it out. Like, you come up with your own conclusion. I made the movie. You go ahead and come up with whatever theory you want. And I think that's, we were talking about The Shining before. It's like, I think The Shining also does that too. It's like
the photo at the end.
Exactly.
Why is the photo there? What does it mean? Does it mean anything? Right? Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Again, these are filmmakers working on a whole different level. So, well, I mean, I love both of these movies in a very particular way, and that is the fact that they are both meant just to be entertaining for me. I'm not going to get any kind of value out of these movies other than entertainment. And at the end of the day, isn't that what movies are for? Like, I really hate when people overanalyze certain movies when they are just meant to have fun and have a good time. And that's why when I do the Siskel and Ebert podcast, I'm so salty against those critics, because they just don't want to have fun. They want to look at it analytically, or, don't waste your money on this. If I took their advice, I would have missed out on a ton of great movies that I think are fucking fantastic, because they are not playing to the mainstream. They're playing on a whole different level, and we should be grateful that they exist.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Like Godzilla 97.
I'll always love it. I don't care.
In defense of. Absolutely. Okay, so which of these two were your favorite, man? Because these are really close in my book.
They're both very good. I will say that up front. But I had more fun watching Body Double, because I got to really enjoy the comedy of it with my wife. We really had a lot of fun watching it together. And I think what Dress to Kill does, I think, is it's darker. It feels more giallo, where I don't think Body Double is. I don't know if I would put it in the giallo category, even though I do see the elements. I think it's just, for me, I would probably go with Body Double because of the entertainment factor. I think Dress to Kill, though, is one of those, like, I want to sit down and just watch it again and try to pick it apart, and not in like a critic, type of way, but pick it apart and try to see if I can find things that I didn't notice before.
No, I agree with you that. I'd say that Dress to Kill, where I think that if you're going to compare it to a giallo, it's definitely more Argento, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where I think that Body Double is more Umberto Lenzi, who just does a lot more goofy shit. I mean, if you've ever seen Nightmare Beach, right? It's a slasher movie, it's 80s, but it's goofy as fuck. And I think that's kind of what this does, is it doesn't want you to nail a genre to it. It wants to be its own thing. And I think that we need a lot more of that. And when we see movies from companies like A24 or Focus or Neon, we're seeing a lot more of that, where people are bending genres. And I think that's going to be the future of at least theatrical experiences, because studios are freaking out that the old formulas aren't working anymore. Spend more money, put more stars in it, and people aren't showing up, and they're talking shit about it online. But you give them something that is just fucking wacky. Everything Everywhere All at Once, perfect example, right? That's a movie that is hard to nail down. Like, what is that? Is it a kung fu flick? Is it a comedy? Is it a drama? Or is it everything fun about movies in one package? And that's what I'd say Body Double is, but with more boobs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dude, I love it so far. Okay, so this is our third round of these double features. We have Carrie Fury, we have Obsession and Blowout, and we have Body Double and Dress to Kill. What is your favorite of the three double features that we've covered? Is it the ESP? Is it the drama suspense? Or is it the sleaze?
I got to go with sleaze.
I'm going with sleaze too.
I had so much fun with these movies. I really did.
There's still plenty of De Palma films to tackle. And we've talked about this. Like, there's something really special about this guy, where you can pair up movies in his catalog and they make the perfect double feature. They make the perfect pairing. Carrie Fury was a perfect example. Obsession and Blowout, I think, is another great one. You play Blowout first, and then people who want to stay through Obsession can stay through Obsession.
Yeah.
But these two, man, it's like peanut butter and jelly. They just work so well together.
Yeah, and you could watch. I think the SLEAZE, the movies, you could interchange. Like I watched Dress to Kill first, and then, or no, I watched Body Double first, and then Dress to Kill, and you could go either way, because you could either start
100%.
off with the comedy, and then kind of bring yourself into the drama, or you kind of coming out of the dark place that was Dress to Kill, and you're like, I need something lighthearted.
100%.
And that's what Body Double is.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to put together our next one in a few months. It's just getting more and more fun, but this one's going to be hard to beat because these two movies are a blast.
Yes.
All right, so Dissect That Film, you guys are just kind of killing it lately. You're in your holiday movies right now. This will air just before New Year's. So, do you guys got any good plans for the new year for 2025?
So we probably, as when this comes out, our last episode of our holiday favorites will be out. So that it'll, it's not announced as of the recording. So, but we are going to be taking a small break over the month of January. So we're kind of need a little bit of a recharge, but we're looking forward to what 2025 has got to offer. We don't really have any plans right now on what we're going to be kicking off the year with, but yeah, we're just having a lot of fun just talking about whatever movies we want to talk about.
It's fun. I get to talk about DePALMA movies with guys like you every week. It's a lot of fun. It's my escape from the real world 100%.
Yes.
Hopefully people can listen to it in their car and not think about work from it. Be like, oh yeah, I should watch Body Double again.
Yes.
Or for the first time.
You should.
Awesome. Well, okay, everyone, thank you so much for listening and watching on YouTube. Please like, review, rate, subscribe, 5 stars, not only to the Cultworthy, but to Dissect That Film. And you guys are still all over the socials. I know a bunch of us have kind of jumped off Twitter. I'm not sure if you have yet.
No, we're still there. I figured we'll stay there till the fire burns away or whatever.
It burns away.
Yeah. You can find us at Dissect That Film on pretty much every social media app out there except for Instagram and Threads. We're at Dissect That Film Pod. Right. We're on Blue Sky now, so if you're not on Twitter, we're over there. We're on everything, YouTube and all that stuff. So Dissect That
And
Film.
you can find the links to the show in the episode notes and in my Cultworthy Partners page on the cultworthy.com. They've been there for a while because it's like 2 years now we've been doing this.
Yeah.
If I'm not on your show, you're on mine. It's been a blast. So.
Yes. Thank you again.
All right, Brett. So everyone, stay tuned for what the next DePalma Files double feature is going to be. There's many ways it can go, but until then, enjoy this sleazy double feature. And Brett, I'll talk to you later.
Have a good one. Bye.